What's up, guys? I'm Des. This is Chris. This is Ryan. And welcome to The Up.
This is my perfect victory! That's right! I win!
Welcome back, guys.
Back, big day today.
Huge day. College football is right around the corner. Therefore, we are heading and diving into everything regarding the season. We'll talk about the national championship contenders. We'll break down every Power 4 team, their conference, how they rank, and then some of the biggest names. And then we'll finish with some rapid fire debates. Y'all ready? Hey, without further ado, let's jump right into it. How are we feeling about this college football season?
I honestly think we're heading for a very interesting college football season, maybe one of the more interesting ones we've had in a long time. The biggest thing that stands out to me is that there is no one singular team that stands out among the rest. I think we can't sit here and point the finger at this team's clearly better than everybody else. I think there's a lot of quality at the top, no standout, and there's going to be a lot of interesting scenarios happen throughout the season. So I'm excited to see what Cream rises to the top and what maybe low-level teams or teams that we don't expect to do very well that actually plays better than expectations. So I think we're in for a very exciting college football season, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it.
I'm just excited. You get to see new teams, new players, and new coaches all in programs together. A lot of them went and followed their coaches. A lot of them went off to different places, try to get better and have better seasons. So I think it's going to influence how the season's going to go. We're going to see, I think, a lot of teams that were good last year fall off because of it. And we're going to see a lot of teams that were not really great teams last year maybe take that next step to become an 8, 9, 10 win team this year. So I'm excited to see how that goes for all of them.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think
Absolutely.
past all the players and teams, honestly, I'm just ready for some good football. I know there's been, the off season, you get the rumblings, everyone gets bored. So, you start rumbling about formats and this and that. And, while a lot of people embrace the old, and I think the old worked well, I do like that they're moving forwards into a new era of how they do it. And I will think there is growing pains that come with that. But nonetheless, I think it's going to better in the end. 5-10 years from now, we'll look back and be like, wow, I like this format better than it was, 2 years ago. And
Absolutely.
it's just going to keep going. So I'm excited for that too. So let's jump right into it. Who are your guys' top 5 national title contenders heading into the season? We'll do one by one and we'll go from there.
So you just
Chris,
want number one
I want
straight
number
off
one.
of that? Okay.
Number one.
I mean, for me, it's easy to be biased in this scenario. Just looking at a team top to bottom, looking at coaching staff, looking at pedigree, looking at, year in, year out. As of right now, I'm going to hold them, Ohio State, at my top spot until further notice. I think for just straight up hype and expectations and with the roster, I like everything that's there. I like what's on the defense. I like who's coaching the defense. I really like what's on the offense. And I think that side of the ball has a lot to prove this year. So with that being said, I have them holding my top spot going into the season.
Ryan, who do you have at 1?
I got Indiana. I think Indiana is obviously your national champions. I think when you win a championship, you deserve to stay in that spot until proven otherwise. I think Indiana lost a lot of people, but they also brought in a lot of people that I'm very high on and I think are going to benefit their team. So it's hard for me to put Indiana anywhere below 1.
Me personally, I am going to stick with the Big Ten trend, but I think Oregon is the team that is number 1 for me as a national title contender. I think they have all their pieces. That defense is back, very stout, and then they got their quarterback in Dante Moore. I do believe that he is an elite quarterback. I thought he was the best quarterback that was going to go into that draft class. He did pull out last second, which could be a bad sign, but also could be a good sign. It could be a sign of that Dan Lanning has built a culture there at Oregon, that he's able to bring out this guy who's going to go in the first round in the NFL draft, bring him back for another year to go get that national title. So that's who I have at 1. Chris, who's at your 2 spot?
I'm going to kind of go right with you there. I got Oregon at my 2 slot. I think looking at just a full roster, they're one of the more talented teams in the country. The experience at quarterback coming back is huge for them going into this season. We know Dan Lanning has done very, very well in the regular season in the past few years, and I don't expect that trend to change at all this year. It's always been, can they win the games at the end of the regular season after it's all over, and the more important games in the playoff and postseason. So I do have them on my 2 spot. They have a lot to prove, and that's a coaching staff that's really trying to put it all together for that roster and for that city. So let's see if Oregon can put it together, but I do have them at my 2 spot.
All right, coming in at number 2 for me, I have Ohio State. I think Chris kind of nailed it. I think they're going to have a very powerful offense that they're going to be running all season. I think there's a couple questions on defense that I have, but normally as the season goes on, Ohio State kind of answers those real quickly. So not going to take any knocks against them on the defensive side of the ball because I know how Ohio State works. But number 2, I got Ohio State.
Nice.
Number 2, it's a close one for me, but I have Texas. I think Arch Manning coming in for his second year as a starter, he's shown, especially at the end of that year, that he's able to make the throws that needs to be thrown. He can elude the pocket. He also has a lot of great weapons around him offensively. And then on the flip side on defense, I think Colin Simmons is one of the best players, one of the best players in college football, if not the best defensive player in college football. And pairing that with an elite defensive coordinator in Will Muschamp, I really do think that they're going to be a very scary team offensively and defensively. And they do have a couple early tests, such as Ohio State. But nonetheless, I do believe that Texas could prevail as a top-tier team. Chris, who's in your 3 spot?
But to me, it's hard to overlook this team for very long, just because they're just year in and year out. You know that they win it all very, very easily. And I got Georgia at my 3. I think they have one of the best head coaches in college football. Kirby Smart just knows how to win those important games, and he knows how to come back when he's down. He's proven it year in, year out. I'm not saying that they're going to be, the best team in the country, but I do believe that when it comes to figuring out how to win games, he's able to do that. And I think he returns a little bit more experienced roster from last year. I think they were pretty young, so it'll be exciting to see what he's able to do down there, and see if he can get them back to the form he's had them in the past. So I have them at my 3 spot.
Number 3, I have Texas. I think they return a lot in their offense as far as the quarterback room. I think running back room got really, really deep, as well as the wide receiver room. So I think offense is going to be flying around in Texas. Their defense, I think once again, there's a couple questions, but I don't really have any worries about Texas. They got a great head coach. They got great players, and I think they're going to have a great season.
At my 3 spot, I have Ohio State. I think there's not much of an explanation needed year in, year out, like Chris has alluded to, that they are a top-tier team. They're a top 3 team almost every single year for the past however many years. They return Julian Sand, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. They return arguably the best player in the nation in Jeremiah Smith, with a stout defense who did lose a lot of key pieces, but they did reload. And I also think it's going to be interesting to watch them play the other 2 teams I thought were really high on, Oregon and Texas. And obviously, if they can win those 2, they'll prove themselves as a top team in the nation. But we'll have to see. Chris, who do you have at your 4?
4, I'm not going to let this team fall any further. I'm going to put Texas at the 4. I think there's just too much overall talent on that roster to put them any lower. That team is absolutely locked and loaded at almost every position group. It's going to be very interesting to see what Sark is able to do with that team, especially early in the season, because they did struggle early in the season last year. We'll see if Will Muschamp can, help them defensively, which I feel like they were mostly solid defensively last year. It's really more offense. Can that offense get going with the weapons that they have and put it all together? So we'll see if Arch Manning can find his form early and if they can come out swinging a little bit better than they did last year. So I have them at my 4.
At my 4, I do have Oregon. Like I said, Dante Moore turned down millions and millions of dollars to come back and run it one more time. So it's hard for me to think with as many weapons as they have and Dante's experience and him coming back that they fall outside the top 5. So that's who I got at my 4.
For me, at my 4, I have Georgia, who I think arguably is the most stable national title contender. They have a veteran offense with great stability, efficient quarterback, and that Kirby Smart defense year in and year out is just an elite team. So while I do have them at 4, I do think they are the most stable, and they will have the highest floor of all those teams. Chris, rounding it out, who do you have at your 5?
At my 5, I'm going to go ahead and put Notre Dame at the 5. I think that's a university who's really trying to get everything lined up and really motivated, especially from last year after missing out on the college football playoff and playing 2 tough teams, 2 teams that actually did making it into the playoff and losing those games in the last few moments. I think that's a team that's motivated to get back into the mix and prove to the committee that they do belong and that they will make a deep run in the college football playoff. So I'm high on Notre Dame. I think they have a lot of the pieces needed to do it. And I think Marcus Freeman is a fantastic coach, and he's trying to prove that this year with his team and the roster that he's been able to assemble.
Number 5, I have Georgia. I do think Georgia is a great team. I do think that you start to notice year in and year out that they're not as good as they were the year before. Gunnar Stockton, I've never really seen him as an elite quarterback, but if there's one thing that Kirby Smart is good at doing, it's winning with quarterbacks that aren't flashy. So it's hard for me to say that Georgia is going to fall out of that spot. So that's my 5.
5, I have Miami. While they did lose some defensive stars, they reloaded the offense. I think Darian Mensah, as well as returning Mark Fletcher and Malachi Tony, is going to be a huge, huge asset, especially in the ACC. And so with that, I do think that upside on offense will prove to help guide them to a very good season. So now that we kind of rounded out our top 5 contenders of that group, of your group of your 5, who is the biggest pretender in that group?
That one's tricky. To me, I'm looking at, and I don't know. I don't want to point the finger and say it could be Texas based off of what happened last year, but I'd have to go with, if I gotta pick somebody, I'm gonna go Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame. We never really know what Notre Dame is gonna do in the regular season. I mean, we've seen them lose to what Marshall. They lost to. They lost to Was it Northern Illinois? Yeah. So and that's both times they had the better team, much better team, and just some fluke loss happened in the regular season for them. So you kind of never know what to expect out of Notre Dame. I think if I'm going to label somebody to be a pretender, I'd have to go with them, even though I think highly of all the 5 teams that I had mentioned. But based off of, recency bias, I'm going to have to go with Notre Dame on that one for my list.
Of your group, who is your biggest pretender?
It's going to be Oregon. I think Oregon is a team that always has a high scoring offense. I think when you pair up Oregon into all these playoff teams and all these teams that have really good defenses, I think that's where you're going to see them struggle. I think it showed a little bit last year, and I expect them to have the similar problems this year. And I also think Oregon's defense is good enough to hang with the good teams, but I don't think it's a defense that I really can say defense wins championships for. So I have Oregon as one of my biggest pretenders.
For me, I'm really torn between Miami and Georgia, with Miami having you just uncertain about that defense. But for me, I'm going to say Georgia. While I do think they are the most stable of the bunch, there is always that concern, especially in this landscape of college football, where most of those great teams, the top teams, have explosive offenses, and Georgia's it's more centered around that tempo. They control the tempo of the game. They can manhandle you and they can beat you. Now, if you can set off that tempo and the other team can control that tempo, I'm worried if Georgia can maintain that back and keep up with that explosive offensive scoring. So now, who is your dark horse to make a serious playoff run?
I would say a team that I'm high on to make a playoff run, and it's not like this team is not expected to be good, but I think to make a larger than expected run would be Oklahoma. I think Mateer is coming back with a vengeance. He's obviously put on a lot of muscle, as we've seen in the pictures that have been shown lately. I think that he's got something to prove, especially with the injury that kind of derailed his expectations for last year for where they had started. So I think Oklahoma is a sneaky team that could put it all together offensively and defensively, and maybe win some games that people don't expect them to, late down the stretch, and make a deep run in the postseason.
Right.
My dark horse I have right now is LSU. There's a lot of questions on what's going to happen with that team with Les Miles calling the plays. Or not Les Miles.
Throwback. Lane Kiffin?
Ed Orgeron?
Lane Kiffin. Lord. Dang. Yeah, so Lane Kiffin calling the plays. You're going to have that just threw my whole train of thought off. Yeah, but you have all these new players coming in. You have Sam Levitt under center coming from Arizona State. I'm really excited to see him play in the SEC. So I think there are games on LSU's schedule that are going to be hard-fought wins, and they're going to come out as the better team in some of those wins. And I hope that it's enough to make the playoffs. And I think if they do get in the playoffs, it's going to be a scary team that people aren't going to want to see.
For me, my dark horse, maybe there's ACC bias here, but I have Clemson. I think that they have finally utilized the portal. I've not bought into this Dabo can't coach thing or he's washed or any of that. And I believe that people forget that there's an automatic bid. If you think Miami's automatically winning the ACC, that's not guaranteed. I do think that in the ACC, whatever team goes in, whatever team gets that auto bid, you never know. There's 4 or 5 teams who will have to play each other late in the season, which will determine a title, an ACC auto bid. So I have Clemson. I do think that there will be a major bounce back from the previous year. And keep in mind, 2 years ago they were a second round team in the playoffs. So they're my dark horse. So to wrap it all up, if you had to put money on one team right now, today, to win the national title, who are you putting money on and why?
If I'm putting money down, just like I said, right now, this is my top team. I have Ohio State that I'm putting money on just because this is the first time that they've returned a starting quarterback since Stroud. And we all know what Stroud was able to do with the offense, what we were able to do with the offense with a returning quarterback. So I really, really like the experience coming back. I like the defensive mind on that coach on that side of the ball. I like what he's done last year, first year. I think he's only going to add a little bit more of layers to this defense next year or this year. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do. And if I had to put money on one team, top to bottom, I think they're the best, and I'm putting it on Ohio State.
I'm going Indiana. Haven't really switched up on them. So I'm going to continue going with Indiana. If I had to put money on them, I would. I think their roster is better than what they had last year. They have the Michigan State wide receiver, Nick Marsh, and they have Josh Hoover, who I was big on at TCU. And they just have a baller head coach that knows what he's doing. He knows how to bring the best out of the worst players on the team. He brings the toughness, the grit, the grind, and all that you need out of a head coach into a team. And I think that Indiana is going to play those tough games, and they're going to play them tough, and they're going to play them hard, and they're going to come out on top. So I believe that is my team I'd put money on.
If I had to put money on one team to win the national title, I'm putting it on Oregon. I think that there's been one. I like to bet on trends. So there's that trend of the Big Ten, but nonetheless, it's that explosive offense is coming back, led by senior Dante Moore. I do think that he is an elite NFL prospect. I think that defense, despite losing their DC, is going to come back. They're reloaded, and I just see Oregon winning a national title this year.
Throwing money away.
That's
Throwing
interesting.
your money away.
Des, you picked a Big Ten team. Ryan, you picked a Big Ten team. I picked a Big Ten team. So it seems like all of us are on the side of our top teams are from one conference.
My top 10 or my team is picked based off of the coach, not the conference.
He's in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with why I picked
He's
him.
Bama made. Bama
If
made.
he was in the Big 12, I still would pick him.
He wouldn't be doing that in the Big 12. That's why he's in the Big Ten.
Buddy, look him up. Google him, as he would say.
We've played him
How'd that
many
work out for
times.
him? All right, let's jump right into the SEC. We're going to go rapid fire here. Chris, who is in the SEC championship game?
This one's tough. Number 100%, I'm going to take Georgia. If there's a team that I'm betting on that's going to have to make it there to the end, I'm going to put that money on Georgia. I think Georgia is pretty much a lock to get into that game. Kirby Smart knows how to do it better than anybody else. For his opponent, this is tough. I'm torn between a couple of options here. I like the schedule for Texas A&M, and I think they could sneak their way into the championship game. But I'm gonna go with Texas on this one. I think their tougher matchup in the beginning is going to be an out of conference game, and I think that they're going to make their way through the SEC this year. And I believe we will be seeing a Georgia versus Texas SEC championship game once again.
And who wins it?
I would have to go with. Seems like Kirby has their number, so I'm going to rock with Georgia winning that game, even though I think it'll be a battle to the finish. It's just like I talked about earlier. He just has a knack for winning those close games, and he's never really out of the game. You know what I'm saying? Like it always comes down to the end, and Georgia's always going to have a chance to win the game or come back. They're always going to be in that mix. So I like Kirby winning that, and I think he takes the SEC back.
I also have Texas versus Georgia in my SEC championship. You know, Arch Manning, he's going to do his thing, and Kirby Smart is going to get his team to the spot. I do, though, have Texas finally getting over the hump and Sarkisian finally beating Kirby Smart. I think there's just too much weapons for Arch Manning to lose that game. So those are my two.
I wish I could say something like Mississippi State and Arkansas, but I have to say Texas and Georgia.
Yeah, maybe
I think
they were dreaming.
I think both those teams are the top of the SEC. I think they will meet in the SEC championship again, but I do have Texas winning this one. I think that defense is going to be built up to an elite standard, and that offense has so many weapons. I do think it'll be close, but I'm going to take Texas. Now we're going into which SEC team is the most overrated in your opinion?
Personally, I don't think they're like crazy high getting like top 5, but I don't think LSU is going to be as good as everyone's making them out to be. one thing I do know that it's not so easy to take success to another program and have it happen right away. Does it happen? Yes. It's more rare than it's not. So I don't see Lane Kiffin having the Ole Miss success he had last year and taking that immediately to LSU. But you have different people, different personalities, different culture that you're trying to build. And I don't think it'll be ready just yet for him to go on a crazy type run and win and make his way into the playoff or even necessarily contend in the SEC. I think there's gonna be some growing pains. I think it's not gonna be as easy to kind of bring it over. And I just don't think LSU will have that immediate success that everyone seems to think that they will have.
My overrated team, I got Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss, I see them as a 8-win team, maybe 9 if they can steal a game or two. It's hard for me to think that they're going to be good with everything that happened, Lane Kiffin leaving. They played really well in the first playoff game they played, but it wasn't against a insane stout team that they would probably face in the SEC. So it'll be interesting to see how Ole Miss matches up in the SEC with
Did you say Ole Miss didn't play that good in the playoff?
who'd they play first round?
Well, they ended up playing Georgia and beating Georgia. They played Miami and nearly beat Miami. So I think they
I thought
played
they
pretty
played like
well.
Tulane or something.
Well, they played Tulane in the first round,
Smoked them.
beat them pretty
Yeah, that's-
bad, but they did good in the playoff. Just throwing that out there.
Yes, I'm more, but I just don't think they're going to bring that into this season. I think they will be worse than they were last year. So I have them at 8 wins.
My overrated team is Tennessee. I think people are remembering some previous years Tennessee's are not kind of overlooking closely at what they had to replace this past year. I don't think that they're bad, but I just think there's a lot more uncertainty, especially in that quarterback position. Now, especially on that defensive side of the ball early in the year. I believe they're missing a linebacker the first 2 games and then an edge or a safety for the season. And so I do believe that this, not saying that Tennessee was projected to win the SEC championship or anything, but people are looking at it as a ranked team, the top 10, or sorry, top 15, top 20 team, kind of a threat. And I just don't think they are. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot that should have been replaced and that wasn't sufficiently replaced to that level to be even a contender in the SEC. So now, what SEC team is being overlooked?
I think I'll go with Oklahoma. I talked about them being my dark horse. I think that's an easy team to say that they're being overlooked. I don't think too many people think that they'll contend in the SEC very much, but I actually do, like I said, have them winning a couple games that people don't expect them to win. I just think that if they can stay healthy, if Mateer can stay healthy this year and they can get a full season, I like what they're able to do if they're able to make a next step and take that the next level, get to the next level with their offense. I think their defense will be fine, and I think if their offense can click for the whole year, I like what they're going to be able to do in the SEC. So that's my most overlooked team.
My most overlooked team right now is South Carolina for obvious reasons. Like we talked earlier, Chris has their ceiling. What'd you say, 10-2?
Yeah, I think that's looking at the schedule. That's possible.
Yeah, I have USC ceiling at 12-0. Why not? I think
I
we looked
mean,
at the schedule. I think there's
I
a
guess
lot of
that's
that are
possible.
50-50.
in theory,
Yeah, there are a lot of games that I think we could steal, and there are games that I think you can't really say we're going to lose this game for sure. So maybe something goes out and we win all 12. I think our floor, honestly, is 8-4. And I think our over and under is, well, I know our over and under for 6 wins this season is extremely disrespectful.
Not given last year.
Yeah, last year we had 8 wins. We just didn't finish them.
What did it say on the schedule? What did it finish with?
so by that theory, did Atlanta Falcons win the Super Bowl in 2017?
You
Please
just
say
didn't
yes.
finish it.
Please say
They
yes.
should've,
Please
right?
say yes.
They should have.
Please say yes.
But I don't think you're going to see a season like that again. Not from Beamer. I don't think he'll let it happen. I think that season was just very, very disappointing, mostly because the season before we had such a deep identity in our run game with Rocket Sanders. And then we go to a system of like 4 running backs that all get 10 carries a game and they all can't get but 2 yards per carry. So it's hard to win a game when you're only rushing for 26 yards and 10 of those come from your quarterback. So that's what my overlooked teams are.
My overlooked, I was kind of torn between two. I was thinking Texas A&M. I think people don't talk about them enough because they were just a playoff team last year. While they didn't go far, they still were a playoff team, and now they're kind of being talked as a team that's not even making the playoffs. I think that they returned their quarterback. They retained some defensive pieces and strengthened that, as well as a great coach of Mike Elko. But my overlooked team is South Carolina. I do see put as like in the group of the Arkansas and the Mississippi States, and they're not. They're not. They are a team that can go out and give a scare to a team like Texas A&M. They'll give scares to Georgia. They'll give scares to these top dogs. I'm not saying they'll win. I'm not saying they're a playoff team. But they are a team, you look at last season, you go, oh yeah, they suck. They have the talent. They have the pieces. It's the coaching that I'm worried about. So we'll see how that goes. And he says last year was a fluke. The year before that, they were really good, like 9 and whatever. The year before that, they were crap, missed a bowl game. The year before that, they were really good. So if we're playing this interval bull crap, kick this guy off the team. Get this coach out of here so they can properly use their talent. But I think they're overlooked because at the end of the day, a team with talent is still a scary team.
I'm excited for
Going into that, who's under the most pressure this season in the SEC? Let me start because I've already started this. Shane Beamer. I'm getting sick to my stomach watching these. He got 3 guys on that team who arguably could be like what Ohio State just did on their defense, putting like 3 guys in the top 10. Easily could have done that last year, but he didn't. He didn't. It's this rickety interval, whatever. Why? So many good players come through that school for no good reason because it's just back and forth. 9 wins, can't complete anything. Oh, I mean, I'm talking about the A&M, them getting A&M's coming back on them. I just watched like a 5-minute montage of like 30-second clips of teams just coming back on South Carolina. I didn't realize he can't finish the job. So this is his time. Last year they stunk it up. You know, you fired the correct coaches, right? You got a new OC in, you got a new O-line coach in, and he goes out high on his high horse saying, we're going to be a playoff contending team. Now you got to back it up. You just lit the fire because he's likable. He is a likable guy in South Carolina. They love him. And I can see why. I really can. But looking at it, he lit that fire. Now it's time to either put it out or hit the road. So my guy, Shane Beamer, he is under a lot of pressure this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you there. I think that him saying that was not the confidence that he had next year. I think that was a last-ditch effort to keep his job. I think ultimately he said that so he could keep his job. I think he was on the hot seat, and conversations were had about whether they should retain him or not. I mean, yes, he's bringing in a little bit more talent than they're used to, but he's really not producing any more results than what they're used to. I mean, they haven't played for an SEC championship game since Shane Beamer's been in there. They haven't really been all that close. They haven't really been that close to a playoff. I mean, they were within a couple rankings, and then the 9-3 season, I think, is what they had. But they're still losing games that they shouldn't lose with the talent that they have. You can't be up in these games and lose and call yourself a great coach. That's not how it works. So I think in regards to your argument, Des, I definitely agree. But I'm actually going to kind of pivot to another coach, and I'm going to say Kalen DeBoer is under the most pressure. I think if you cannot be the head coach at Alabama and continue to put out less than stellar seasons, and I think so far in his tenure at Alabama, we've seen less than stellar, especially what we're used to with Nick Saban. And if you want to talk about, the whole being born on third base, I mean, he was pretty much handed the keys to a golden kingdom. Granted, they had a lot of players lose, but that is Alabama. Alabama's known for winning, and you can just be Alabama and recruit players just from being at that school. So I think that there's really no excuse with now we're going into year 3 of his time at Alabama. And it's about time that we start seeing the results come in and not these 9-3, 8-4 efforts from Alabama. So let's see if they can kind of pull up their bootstraps and go out there and win some games that they need to win. And I think this season proves that. And with them extending him, I mean, there's a little bit less pressure there with the extension, but I think the people are going to be trying to buy him out if he puts out an 8-4 season. So that's who my guy is.
I have Alabama as well. I think Kalen DeBoer is definitely under the most pressure in the SEC. You have 8 to 9 win seasons back to back on a team or on a fan base that's used to winning 11 games a season, 12 games a season. Like a 10-win season under Nick Saban, like he was almost crucified for that. Like that was unheard of. So I think in a fan base that's not used to losing 3 games, I mean, that's a luxury to have. I wish I could say that, but the 9-3 season ain't going to be good enough for Kalen DeBoer, especially with that extension that you just brought up. I do think that they have, I believe he's a redshirt freshman or whoever the quarterback they have now.
Keelan Russell?
Yeah.
And Austin Mack, I believe, are their 2 quarterbacks.
I don't know. I think
I
they're
think
young.
Keelan is a redshirt. Yeah, he's a redshirt freshman.
They have 2 young quarterbacks, and I think this is his chance to kind of mold them into what he wants them to become for the system and retaining him. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see an Alabama team this year that's going to struggle in games because of the young quarterback play. But I think next year you're going to see Alabama go crazy in the portal trying to get whoever becomes that certified starter some help in order to save DeBoer's life right now. Because if they go 8-4, I don't think Alabama's going to give him more than one more year.
It'd be tough when you
Yeah.
got to pay all that money, you know?
I agree. Well, that kind of wraps up our SEC preview. Now we're going to pivot into arguably the conference that is the king of college football, the Big Ten. Who wins the Big Ten this year, and who do they play in that Big Ten championship game?
I can go off first. I think it's going to be Ohio State and Oregon. I think it's going to be like that for years to come. I think NIL is going to help that almost basically become a rivalry game that we're going to see on conference week every single year. And I think this year it's hard for me to say Ohio State's not going to win it. I think their offense is just as powerful as Oregon's, and I think their defense is going to end up stepping up and becoming better than Oregon's defense, and Ohio State's going to win it.
Chris, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say that those are probably your 2 premier teams in the Big Ten this year, and I think that you're going to see them potentially play each other. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Ohio State does play Oregon. They do play Indiana. They do play Michigan. They do play Iowa. They do play USC. So they're going to play a lot of the cream of the Big Ten this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out and, who ends up in the Big Ten championship game. But I will say, if I had to pick the top 2 teams to make it, those are going to be the 2. Based off trends, Ryan Day has not won the Big Ten in quite some time. He's been in the championship game last year, wasn't able to get it done. He's missed out the years prior. I don't believe he's won it since he played Northwestern during COVID, and that's going to be that's a long time now. So I don't know if I can confidently say Ohio State's going to get it done, as much as I would love to say that they'll be able to finish that off and actually win the Big Ten. So I'm going to be unbiased here. I'm going to take Oregon to win the Big Ten just because Ohio State hasn't been able to get the job done. And I'm going to hold them to that until Ryan Day proves otherwise, that he can win the conference. Do I believe he will get there? Yes. He needs to prove to me that he can win the Big Ten.
Very true. For me, I do think Oregon's going to win the Big Ten. I want y'all to stick with me while I say this. I do believe that they will be playing Penn State in the Big Ten championship. I'm not 100% the exact rules of the tiebreaker. I do think Penn State brought over an Iowa State team with a great coach who has a lot of work to do, but they don't play a single person but USC. They play USC, they play Michigan. And, they get over one of those 2, and you're cruising through teams like Northwestern, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Maryland.
I would do to play that schedule.
You're not facing.
You would
them.
still
And
go 5-7 in that schedule.
No.
We'll see. But here's the thing. I do think Matt Campbell is a very good coach. I'm not saying he's elite, but he's a very good coach. I think that team he inherited and brought over are not bad. They're good enough to beat those teams in the Big Ten. Therefore, they can drop one to either USC and Michigan, and you lose one game, you're in the championship game.
Didn't they have like 0 recruits come in for the 2026 class? They all left when Franklin got fired. Yeah, transfers are different, but the recruits, there's nobody who came in.
What's a recruit going to do this year?
Away?
Yeah, I was about to say, what's a recruit going to do this year?
Plenty. You could get a freshman that starts and does great right off the bat.
A couple.
You could. South Carolina had like 7 of them last year.
I was about
Penn
to say,
State doesn't play.
That's why we went 4-8.
Penn State doesn't play a lick of teams.
Penn State had actually a really good roster last year and was pitiful.
Coaching.
Hey, well,
He had just got them to the playoff the year before and went deep.
And what did he do that year?
He went to the game before the championship game. He went to the semifinal.
Got fired. No, I like James Franklin. But I guess that kind of pivots into the question of which Big Ten team is the most overrated going into the season. And I think going into it, we know Penn State's not a good team, but you're going to look and you're going to go, okay, it's 6 games in. Why are they 5-1? 8 games in. Why are they 7-1? Why are they on track to make it to a Big Ten? So my guess is Penn State at the end of the year will be the most overrated team. They will go into that Big Ten championship game, get smothered, probably have 2 losses and not make playoffs, because you can tell they will have 2 conference losses, and out of conference is another story. But I do have Penn State as my most overrated. Chris?
For me, this is a little tricky, but I'm gonna go Indiana. I do think that they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a good football team. I do not think they're going to be able to repeat the perfect season that they just had a year ago. I think that was kind of the stars aligned. The culture was there, the players were there, the personalities were there. Everything kind of meshed and aligned really well for that all to happen and take place. But I don't see that repeating. I think Kurt Signetti is a fantastic coach. I'm very high on him. I think he is able to win big games, but I don't see him able to repeat that this year. I think they're going to have some transfer pains, if you call it that, and it's not going to mesh and align as well as it did under with Mendoza under the helm. And I just think that Indiana is a little bit overrated, and I'll have them as my team that's being looked at too highly.
All right. My overrated team this year in the Big 12 is going, or Big 10 is going to be Michigan. I think Michigan is going to be very overrated this year. I think there are a couple people that have them in the top 5 in the Big 10, and I don't even think they crack it. You have Bryce Underwood. I feel like he's going to have a little sophomore slump. I don't think he's going to come out doing what he did last year. But you have
You mean his freshman slump?
A what?
His freshman slump. He didn't come out that good last year.
He was ass.
I think
I
he can
think-
only go up.
I
He
think
played
was,
good at the end of the season.
No.
I think he played good at the beginning.
He played
No.
better than I think to start.
Wonder
Well, I don't watch
why.
him play.
Good running back.
Nobody does. Nobody does. You're good.
Well, for 10 million or whatever he's getting, he's not playing like it, and he's not going to play like it this season. They start out with Western Michigan, who is one of the better teams in the MAC. Not saying that that's a loss, but it's not going to be something that you can overlook because that will be a team that could bite you in the butt. Then you go to Oklahoma, or then you play Oklahoma, then UTEP, Iowa, Minnesota, Penn State, Indiana, Rutgers, Michigan State, Oregon, UCLA, and Ohio State. So they play Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Oklahoma. You got Penn State. You got an Iowa team that always plays gritty and tough. I could see easily a 7-win Michigan, maybe a 8-win Michigan if they play good. I just don't see on that schedule any way that they're going to be in the top 5 of the Big 12 or Big 10.
Chris, what team do you see as being most overlooked going into this Big Ten season?
I think a team overlooked in the Big Ten is going to be USC. I think USC possesses a very, very lethal offense. I think with Jaden Mayava leading the offense, he can get pretty scary with what he's able to do in the backfield. And I think that he's a guy who can make plays and really, really score a lot of points. It's going to be interesting to see if their defense can hold up their end of the deal, if they can help that offense, get through some of those games. But I think USC could easily make some noise in the Big Ten and cause a little bit of chaos in that conference. So I think a team that's being overlooked, especially with Lincoln Riley kind of back on his heels, he's got to really press and push forward to have a great season at USC with all the expectations. So I have them as my most overlooked team.
My most overlooked team is Penn State. I think, like Des said, they brought in basically the whole Iowa State team. I think that shows a lot as a coach and your ability to coach when players want to follow you across the, 2 states maybe. I was about to say country, but geography teacher, by the way. But yeah, I think that shows a lot in the coach and the person that he is. And I think you're going to see a Penn State team that won, a couple games last year, probably enter the 7 to 8 win season. So I don't think Penn State's going to blow anyone away. But like Des said, they do have an easy schedule. So you could see them sneak maybe a 10-win season even this year. And Des is muted.
You're muted, buddy.
That's probably God trying to stop me from saying this dumb stuff, but my most overlooked this year is going to be Michigan. I think Kyle Whittingham is a phenomenal coach. I think that Michigan has more talent and resources, one, than Utah, but two, than people realize. I think going from a coach like Sharon Moore, who not only was his success was built on cheating, his downfall was also built on cheating and being a psychopath, for lack of better words. Well, I have better words. I just don't want to use them. Anyways, so I think going to a guy like Kyle Whittingham, whose whole career has been built on winning regular season games, has been winning those conference games. I believe he's like 177 and 88, which isn't elite, but it sure as heck ain't bad. I think 18 of his 21 seasons were winning seasons. So I don't expect Michigan to go out there and, crap the bed. No, I'm not expecting them to win the Big Ten nor make a playoff, but I could see 8 wins. I could see them, upsetting a team that they probably shouldn't have people think they shouldn't be. So I definitely think Michigan's more overlooked than not. And I do believe that Bryce Underwood is a talented quarterback, potentially. And so there's that question of, is it the fact that he was coaching with a guy, he's being coached by a guy who probably shouldn't have been a head coach, or is he really not that great? And I think a lot of those questions will be answered this year. So don't overlook Michigan. Now going into it, who is under the most pressure this season?
If I had to point one guy out who's under the most pressure, I got to go with Dan Lanning. I think he's got a lot of pressure hounding on him for winning the big games. I don't think it's going to be as much on him in the regular season. We know he does rather well in the regular season. It's going to be, can you get to the postseason and can you actually make a legit run at a college football playoff? And if he's not able to do that, if he gets bounced again like he has the last 2 years, you're going to have to start begging the question is this guy as good of a coach as we think he is? Can he get it done in the biggest games? Now, do I think he's able to assemble a lot of talent? Yes. Do I think he's a regular season merchant as what we could label him now? Potentially, yes. Unless he shows out a big time playoff run, I don't think we can give him the crown of being one of the premier coaches in college football. So I'm awaiting that, and I think he's got a lot of pressure on him over his head for him to have a great postseason run this year.
I also had Dan Lanning, but I crossed it out and went a different direction. I'm going to put the most pressure on Lincoln Riley at USC. I think you leave a Oklahoma program and go over to USC with hopes of becoming a powerhouse, and there hasn't been anything outside of a 9-4 season really that has been like something you could show off. Like last season, I think they flew under the radar and had a quiet 9-win season. I think you're going to see a lot of people put pressure on him to hit that 10-win, 11-win mark. And like we've talked about, Big Ten is, you got some solid teams. It might not be deep, but you have 4 or 5 teams that are all probably contenders. So I think you're going to see a lot of people put pressure on Lincoln Riley to actually be one of those contenders this year.
I mean, I think it's Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning and Oregon as a whole. I think you look at the past, 25 years of Oregon, and, they've had these great teams and fallen short. So overall, as an organization, that football team, but then Dan Lanning specifically, I think there's this overwhelming pressure on him to win that big game. I think the statistic was he's lost 8 games at Oregon. 6 of them have been to someone who played in a national title that year. And so that shows that one, he is, like Chris said, a regular season merchant, for lack of a better word. But he is a really great coach, but you cannot put him in that elite category. And I see him as kind of he's this dam, just overflowing dam. And it's just crack it open. He's just got to crack it open. And he hasn't been able to do it yet. He's been close, but he hasn't. And at the end of the day, he's only 40, right? He just turned 40. He's got time. But if he wants to cement himself into that, he cannot allow this to be his legacy. He can't go another 10, 15 years of this. In 10 years, we look, oh, he's only lost 15 games in 10 years with nothing to do in the playoffs. So he needs to win it. And the sooner he does it, the higher his potential legacy is. So I think it is a huge year for him, not only in terms of winning the big game and being cemented as a legendary coach, but also opening up this just floodgate. He has all the money. He's got all the talent. And I do think he is a phenomenal coach. And if he breaks it open this year, the possibilities are truly endless. So
yeah, if he doesn't win it this year, then you have to ask yourself, is it ever going to happen? I mean, he's got such a good roster. He's got all the pieces needed. If he's not able to do it this year, you like I said, you have to wonder if it's ever going to happen.
Yep, I agree. I definitely agree. So now we're going to pivot into, well, if you ask me, the best conference. If you ask anyone else, arguably the lower end of the Power 4 conferences, the ACC. Chris, let's jump right into it. Who wins the ACC this year?
With that, a conference, man, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, we had freaking Virginia and Duke battling it out last year. And you have to ask yourself, how in the world did that happen? And it's just, maybe you could say NC State with their I think it was their schedule, who they played a conference team, but it didn't count as a conference game. And that was the whole thing. And that kind of messed up your team. So I would have to say, if we're looking at just talent, based off what we've seen recently, you have to say Miami's probably your premier team in the ACC. And you'd have to say with all the talent they have, they will probably be in that game, especially because they missed out on it last year and definitely were one of the better teams in the conference. So my pick to win it would be Miami, and my 2 teams battling it out to get there with Miami would be either Georgia Tech or Louisville. I am high on Louisville going into the season. I like the quarterback they brought in, and I do think they can win some games. But I'm going to be nice to my good friend Dez, and I'm going to say Georgia Tech finds a way to win games in the ACC, and they make it to the title.
Yeah, miracles can happen. That's cute.
Yeah, just like for your
I
team.
have SMU versus Miami in mind. I think Miami's roster and weapons are just too deep, and I think SMU is just a solid team with a solid coach that's not going to lose many games this year. But I ain't got much to say on the ACC because that conference bores me.
Valid.
Like these two, maybe I am a psycho, but it may be I'm biased, but I do love the ACC. I think the parity, especially at the top, is going to make for an entertaining season. I do have Miami being that ACC championship. They're the easy pick. They kind of have a clear path. They're talent-wise, coaching-wise, they're the best. They really are. I mean, there's offensive talent.
Oops.
Always on something. I think God's telling me to go a different direction. So I think in the ACC, there's a lot of parity on the top, but I do believe that Miami is going to be that team that makes it to the ACC championship. They are the most likely one to play in it, the most likely one to win it. I think going into that, who they play, it's really hard because SMU probably has the most clear path schedule. An early win against Louisville, and they could easily coast through their ACC schedule. They don't have to play Georgia Tech. They don't have to play Miami. They don't have to play Clemson. And I think that benefits them very greatly. I do think that Kevin Jennings, I can never pronounce his name right or say it correctly, but I think he is a redshirt senior. He's had the experience. He's shown he is a very talented quarterback. And then Rhett Lashlee, can never pronounce his name right either.
Lashlee.
He is a very good coach. He's led them to multiple 10-win seasons in the last 3 years. So I do think that they will handle business enough to go into that ACC championship game with one loss. So those are my two, and then I have Miami winning it. Chris, what team do you think is most overrated in the ACC?
Most overrated, I would have to go with anybody with any expectations of Clemson. I don't think Clemson is going to turn the tides. I don't think Dabo is going to just put together. I think he has a worse team than he did last year. I think he lost a lot of his experience and a lot of the kind of the remnants of the best players he's been able to get to Clemson in the previous recruiting cycles. I don't think he's recruited really that well compared to what he used to do. He hasn't brought in enough transfers in a cycle to figure out what he's looking for, what he needs, because he hasn't been using the transfer portal. I only see the trend continuing to go down for Dabo with his lack of wanting to adapt and with his fall off in recruiting and overall coaching as a whole. I think anybody looking at Clemson with any amount of, expectations of winning or even making it to the conference championship are going to be very, very disappointed. And I just think that they are very, very much overrated and should not be valued that high going into the season, even in the weaker ACC conference.
I also have Clemson. They have LSU, they have Miami, they have South Carolina. I think those are 3 losses right there. They have a brand new quarterback under center, someone that's been studying behind Cade Klubnik, which as a Clemson fan, that would be my worst nightmare. I don't think Cade Klubnik was that good, but I'm looking up on ChatGPT right now, just Clemson's schedule, and it says Clemson opens at LSU, and then the Tigers have a challenging stretch with Miami, Florida State, Syracuse, and Duke. Now, that being said, that just shows how strong the ACC is when Florida State, Syracuse, and Duke is your challenging teams. But hey, what can I say? South Carolina plays Kentucky, Mississippi State. Those are our challenging teams, I guess.
Don't forget your first 2 games of the year.
But yeah, of course.
Group
Solid
of
challenge
5.
for South
My
Carolina in
overrated
that first
team.
game. I think my overrated is SMU. I think that they are going to likely win 10 to 11 games again and go into an ACC championship. Likely they're gonna lose that game regardless of who they play, but I think they'll slip into the playoffs specifically because their schedule is very weak. And so if they slip in with 2 losses, it's very likely, really depending on what the other teams in the other conference doing in terms of at-large bids. But I mean, 10-2 or an 11-2 team has a pretty favorable chance of making the playoffs despite their schedule. So I do think SMU will be that overrated one. I don't think they're bad. In fact, I think they're quite good, but they're not going to be as good as their record shows. Which ACC team is being overlooked?
I'd have to go with the team I projected to sneak into the title game, and I'm going to go with Georgia Tech. I think they do possess all the makings to be a team that can upset a lot of teams this year and make a run in their conference. They brought in a very very talented running back to their team, which we know how much they like to utilize the run and how much that helps them win games. They did bring in the younger brother of Fernando Mendoza, and that would be a good quarterback to learn under, especially that being your brother. So I think that's going to help them out a lot. I think Brent Key is a very, very good head coach. I think he's learning how to navigate the conference, how to win games, and more importantly, look beyond the conference and even win big games outside of it. So I think I'm expecting a lot out of Brent Key this year. I think he's going to be able to put it all together. I think his team is a little bit more well rounded than it was last year and maybe a little bit more composed going into the big games this year. And I think they pull out a little bit more than they did late in the games last year. So I got Georgia Tech as my most overlooked team, and I'm very high on them going into this season.
My overlooked team, I got Louisville. I think Louisville is a team that we could easily see if they win this first game coming up at Ole Miss, there's a chance that they might go undefeated. You have Louisville, they play, you see SMU, and then Georgia Tech, and then you go to Kentucky for your rivalry game. And then you have obviously Ole Miss week 1. But those last 3 games, I think you could see wins. If they beat Ole Miss, there's a chance they could go undefeated. So I think their schedule is very favorable. I think they brought in Lincoln, Kleinhold.
Keenholz.
You'll have him probably under center with a brand new coach. Or no, my bad. I was thinking of Kentucky. But yeah, I just think that Louisville team played pretty well last year, and they're going to come in just slinging the ball. So I have Louisville as my overlooked team.
As my overlooked in the ACC, I've been tossing and turning between 3 teams, so I'll knock out the first 2, and I can rant about the third one. But first 2, Clemson and Louisville, I think those are 2 teams that are being overlooked. I think Louisville was brought in a very great QB talent to combat with a great coach and a phenomenal running back in that backfield, as well as a strong O-line and a solid defense. I think, like Ryan alluded to, that their schedule isn't that strong. And if you can show that you can keep up with a team like Ole Miss, you can keep up with the rest of the ACC. And then going to Clemson, I think Clemson, their transfer class wasn't great, but it was still 7 or 8 3-4 stars. Their recruiting class was 18 overall for like the 20th straight year in a row, a top 20 class. So I don't think that they're as bad as people think they are. I think they're going to contend for the ACC. I think they are going to put up fights against teams. And like when they play Georgia Tech, going into this, Georgia Tech's going to be battered going into that Clemson game. So I think that's another thing you got to really think about is Clemson has a favorable schedule despite the good teams on their schedule. But my most overlooked is going to be Georgia Tech. They went 9-4 in 2025. They retained their coach. I believe they really completely blew up what they had last year. And realistically, we saw them blow up on their own last year. Brent Key made the expert decision to toss it, flip it to the next year, brought in 5 guys who are all ACC, or retained 5 guys who are all ACC, brought in 19 transfers. You brought in arguably the best running back in the nation. You have another running back who was sat second string and will set second string again, who rushed for 7.3 yards per carry in a good number of snaps. You buffed up the defensive line. You have safeties who have grown. We have a guy in Tay Harris, who I believe will have a phenomenal year. I think he is a high talent. He was a 4-star who got flipped into a 5-star really late in his recruiting process. And then you have a quarterback who got to sit under his older brother, who was a Heisman Trophy winner. He got to sit in a winning program, so he knows how to win. I think Brent Key, he knows how to win. Our George Godsey, he was an NFL OC. He was an NFL coach for many years. I think Brent Key has brought in the pieces for success. Now, we haven't seen it yet, right? They got to get over that hump. But they have shown time and time again that they're able to win against the very good teams. Last year, they blew up. I think it was a chemistry issue. Brent Key went out, fixed that. So I think that is a team, especially if they go in the end of their year and they're undefeated in the ACC or a 1-loss team overall going into that, and they got to go against a great Louisville team, a great Clemson team, I think, and a phenomenal top-tier Georgia team, back to back to back, and you win that, they will be trial tested, and that's basically what you're going to see against in the playoffs. You're playing good team after good team after good team. So if they can go through that, going 3-0 or even 2-1 in a close loss to Georgia or a close loss to Louisville, they will prove themselves as a team that needs to be watched out for.
So as long as they don't lose their last 3 games.
No, as long as they win their last 3. I don't think you heard what I said. I said if they can go,
No. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that last year you
yeah.
lost your 3 games.
You did end the season on a
It's
3-game
okay.
losing
We
streak.
lost
No,
our
we didn't.
middle
No, we
third, our
didn't.
end of third.
You did.
No, yeah, it was 3. I was gonna say it was 4. It was 3. It should have been 4. It should have been 5.
All right. What about who has the most pressure in the ACC?
Yes.
Most pressure, I think we have to look at one guy, and that's going to be Dabo. How much longer can you put out a very, very, very bad season comparing to your previous triumphs that you had at Clemson? I mean, can we continue to say, oh well, he's still a good coach because he did win 2 national championships, but he is going 6-6? I mean, how much can you look into that and say this is normal? It's not normal. What Dabo's doing is not normal. He's not, he's not going to, I don't believe he'll ever get back to what he was. I don't think he'll ever get back what he had at Clemson. I think that era is gone. I think that level of coaching from him is over. I don't know what happened ultimately because it's not
Brett
just the
Venables
transfer.
left.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it was Venables. I mean, but if you're going to, I think it's a combination of transfer portal and just kind of losing your way, not being able to adapt and not figuring out how to win anymore. And I think any great coach is has to adapt and learn how to figure out how to win when the landscape of the sport changes. So I think he's got the most pressure to go out there and win games and put together a halfway decent season. And it's sad that we're saying that, but that's the level of expectations that we've got from Clemson now. And I think he needs to put it all together. And if not, he should be fired.
All right. My most pressure is going to be a name I'm going to throw out that has slid under the radar this offseason, and a lot of people might have forgotten about, is Bill Belichick at North Carolina. I think you're going to see him face the most pressure this season after a 4-8 season. I think people expected the Super Bowl winning coach to come in and just start winning. I don't ever judge a coach based off their first year because you're building your program, but I think this is the year where you're going to see a lot of pressure put on him to actually win. And I think with the schedule given to him, that's going to be really hard. You got to go face TCU, Clemson, Notre Dame, Duke, Miami, and Virginia. Then you also have Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Louisville. I think those are games that are going to be hard for him to win, and that's 9 of your games. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Bill Belichick to win at least 7 of those. And I don't know if that roster is built to win 7 games.
Yeah, I agree. I think Belichick, he's just gonna fade out his career there and call it a day. For me, most pressure I think is Dabo. I think Dabo is under that pressure, and I don't think he'll get fired. I don't think he'll ever get fired unless he, goes out and doesn't make a bowl game. As long as he's winning 7 to 8 games, they're just gonna drag it on and boot him out, just like they did with Frank Beamer. How end of his tenure was it was just kind of a downhill, digressed the whole organization, but that was the greatest coach they ever had, so they're going to keep him. And I think Dabo's he's under that pressure of falling into that same thing. I don't think he will. I think he'll have a somewhat of an increase, and then eventually he'll fade out. But I also think Miami is under a great deal of pressure, and that's just to replicate what they had. I think arguably they got better in a lot of assets on offense, got worse in a lot of assets on defense. And you're going to hold on to that pressure to having another elite season or elite playoff run like they did last year. So I think those two definitely are under a lot of pressure. All right. So let's pivot into the Big 12. Who wins the Big 12 championship this year, and who are they playing?
I got BYU.
Ryan's going.
Oh, my bad. I got
You're
BYU
good.
with Baylor. I think BYU is obviously the top team. They proved it last year, and I think they are still that team to beat. I think Baylor, with the addition of Lagaway, is going to make them better, and I think I'm going to have Baylor upsetting BYU.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, honestly. I mean, I love good college football parody. So, and I do like Lagway. I think he's a great talent. So that'd be exciting to see, to be honest. Chris?
I have Texas Tech making it to the Big 12 and winning it. I just see, what they're doing from a recruiting standpoint, what they did, the talent they've been able to get onto their team. To me, I think is far superior than the rest of the Big 12. I just think you're going to be able to see that as the years go on, and not just this year. Texas Tech is kind of going to push themselves at the top of that conference because of really, if you look at them, the money that they're able to get for the transfer portal, for NIL, to get these recruits, they brought in some really talented recruits. They brought in some really talented transfers. And I just think Texas Tech is not going to be a team, even with the Sorsby stuff. I think they're going to be a team that just kind of establishes themselves as the top dog within the Big 12. And I think going to play them this year, I'm going to kind of throw a dark horse out there. I'm going to say that Houston sneaks in to the Big 12 championship and plays Texas Tech. So I've got Houston and Texas Tech battling it out to win the Big 12.
I hate to say it, but I agree with you, Chris. I do have Texas Tech and Houston battling it out in the Big 10 championship or Big 12 championship. I think Texas Tech, despite losing Sorsby and all that mess, Joey McGuire is a great coach. They brought in a lot of great talent. They've proven that they kind of have that format of how to win. And you got to look beyond the quarterback position. I don't think Sorsby was a phenomenal guy in terms of quarterback. He was great, but he wasn't like, he's not going to affect it enough to where Texas Tech's whole season's over now that they didn't get it. So I definitely think Texas Tech is going to replicate what they did last year. Then Houston bringing Connor Wegman for he's like a 6-year, whatever it was. He was around when people give Haynes King crap. Both of them were battling out in their freshman year. So you have an aged quarterback who's been around the game in both the SEC and Big 12 for a good while, and some other conferences for him. But I do think Houston sneakily had a 10-win season last year, and they could easily slip their way past teams like BYU and Utah. So it should be good to see. Going into that, what team is most overrated in the Big 12 going into this year?
I've got BYU most overrated. I think BYU is not going to be able to do what they did last year. I think they're going to have a little bit of a drop off, and I don't think they're going to be one of the top dogs in the Big 12. I just don't see them being able to put it together again. I think Kalani Sitake is a good coach, but I don't think he's going to be able to do it twice and then put out the season that they were able to accomplish as a team last year. Even though they were able to build a lot of momentum from last year, I just don't see them keeping that going for this upcoming season. So I have them taking a step back, and I think they'll be the most overrated team in that.
Overrated. I have Texas Tech. It's just hard for me with what happened to their QB. They had 10 players drafted and lost about 20 to the portal. You bring in places or people to replace that, but we're talking like first round talent. You have Jacob Rodriguez, who I think arguably could have went in the first round. I don't know how he fell as far as he did, but the way they talked about him and him being a Heisman hopeful and falling that far was kind of crazy to me. But I think the guys that Texas Tech went out and got aren't guys that are as good as what they had. So I think that all these people who are thinking that they're going to be in the championship game are going to be kind of shocked when they're an 8-4 team this year.
Fair enough.
My overrated team is Utah. I think it's really hard to seamlessly go from a team. One, they didn't perform as great as they wanted to last year, and then they lost their head coach to Michigan. And it is really hard to seamlessly transition from that. I think some teams can, but they didn't bring in a slam dunk hire. They didn't bring in a slam dunk transfer portal. They lost some players. So I do think that they won't be a team that's contending for a Big 12 championship. Let alone, I think they'll be a team that, especially early on, struggles to find their feet, struggles to find that new identity, especially with new head coach, new OC, new DC. I really do think Utah will struggle early, maybe pick it up late, but they won't be a team that contends.
I mean, they do have Cam Rising coming back for what should be his 12th year, right?
Crazy.
All right, going on to overlooked. What team do we think is going to be overlooked this year in the Big 12?
I'm going to have to say, sorry,
Des
but
got it. Go ahead.
Houston. I think I alluded at one time. I do think that they had a quiet 10-win season. They brought back a lot of key pieces. They retained their coaching for the most part. So I just think that they are a team that people aren't looking at as a contender, but year in and year out, since they joined the Big 12, they have been a team that can win ball games. They can beat teams that they aren't supposed to beat. And so I think Houston's going to be one that's overlooked. And then late in the season, you're going to go, oh, they got a shot.
It would be easy to piggyback off that. And I definitely agree that Houston's going to make some noise. But I'm going to talk about a guy named Brent Brennan, the head coach of the Arizona Wildcats, who was ranked dead last in Big 12 coaches just a year ago before he led them to a 9-win season and shocked everybody. And I think returning Noah Fafita back to that offense, I think with his coaching, with that talented a player at leading your offense, I like Arizona as the most overlooked team. I think they can make some noise. And I think you could see Arizona in the mix coming down the stretch within the Big 12 and beating teams that you maybe didn't expect and winning these kind of shootouts. And I like Brent Brennan and Arizona as my most overlooked team in the Big 12.
All right. I was torn between two teams, West Virginia being one of them. I think they have a simple schedule, and they also brought in like 46 3-stars. Don't know how in the world you manage that, but there's got to be some gems somewhere in there. But my one team that I think that's going to shock some people this year is Arizona State. I think Arizona State is a dark horse in the Big 12. They brought in Cutter Boley, who was Kentucky's quarterback last year, and you saw him start to play a little bit better as he got comfortable. I think you go to the Big 12 where you're not facing Alabama, you're not facing Oklahoma's defense, you're not facing South Carolina's defense, you're not facing Georgia's defense. But obviously, you got to get him weapons. So what did Arizona State do? They went out and got the number 2 and the number 4 wide receiver in the portal. They brought in Amarian Miller from Colorado. They might have lost their quarterback, but they replaced him. The one question I have for them is their running back room. It appears to be pretty weak when you look at the roster. But good thing is you bring in the number 22 ranked running back in the nation out of high school and a 4-star. You bring in 2 4-star offensive linemen, a 4-star edge rusher, and the number 11 quarterback in the country in high school. So you have a recruiting class that's coming in. You have a transfer portal class that has stars, and I don't see how Arizona State loses more than 9 games this season or wins less than 9 games this season.
Bold, but I like it. I like it. What's one team that is under the most pressure in the Big 12 this year?
To me, I think you're going to have to look at Dion and the Colorado Buffaloes. I think Colorado definitely needs to figure out what their identity is, and we really need to ask Dion, are you going to continue to claim to be this great coach and this very talented team when you can't win games? So I think we're looking at Deion Sanders in Colorado, and I think that we're looking and putting a lot of pressure on that team to go out there and win. And personally, I don't see it happening. I mean, they do have talent on that team, but they've had talent on the team before, and they haven't really been able to put it all together and then win a whole lot of games. So we'll see if Colorado and Deion can get anything done and kind of rise back up in the rankings. I think he had a pretty big fall off after last year. So I think he's facing a lot of pressure to bounce back and have a good solid season. So Colorado is my team, and Deion Sanders is my team with the most pressure on him.
Right.
It pains me to say this because I'm a big fan, but I also have Colorado. Huge Deion Sanders fan. I think he's running that program the right way. I think there's just a problem with his ability to recruit. I think when he had his son and Travis Hunter, I think he brought in, we could say, arguably one of the best. I mean, it felt like the best transfer class we've seen in a while. It just seemed like everybody from Alabama was transferring there. Everybody from these top teams were all going to Colorado to be a part of it. And then once his son left, it was just game over. Everybody started transferring out. Nobody really wanted to come into it. There's not really anybody on that team that I would say is a certified star, any top draft picks. I think you're seeing Colorado start to fall off, and I think you're going to see a lot of people start to blame Deion Sanders for it. So I think he has a lot of pressure to put out some type of winning season, whether it's 7 wins, 8 wins, or 9 wins. I think if he doesn't make a bowl this year, he's done.
I'm not going to say Deion because I have zero expectations of him. I disagree. I think he is a good recruiter. I think you just watch how he coaches and how his coaches coach and how he coaches his coaches, and it sounds cool and all, but it really sucks. End of the day, you need X's and O's to win football games. And you know what they say? What is it? Those who can't play, coach. And Deion can play because obviously he cannot coach. But I do think most pressure is Texas Tech. You have to replicate a phenomenal season like last year. You do lose all these talented guys on the defensive end. And so now you have to go out, replace them, and then show that they have been replaced with sufficient talent. So I do think Texas Tech has a lot of pressure to repeat what they did last year. Now that we've covered all of the Power 4 conferences, let's pivot into the top 5 players in college football this year. Chris, how about you just list it out 1 to 5? Who are your guys?
Number 1 is clearly Jeremiah Smith. I think it's very evident he is the premier best talent and best player in college football. Just what he does year in and year out, I think we can expect an even better season from him this year. So he's in my number 1. Number 2, I'm going to throw out Leonard Moore, cornerback for Notre Dame. I think he is very, very talented. I think there's a kind of a big gap for what he's able to do at that position compared to the rest of the guys in college football at the cornerback position. So I have him at my 2. I'm going to put Arch Manning at the 3. I think for ceiling, I think he's going to be able to put together a great season. I think what he's able to do with his feet, And what he's able to do with his arm is going to be shown this year. And I think I'll put him at my 3. Number 4 is going to be Julian Sand. I think we can only expect him to take a leap. He completed 77% of his passes last year. For me, it's going to be, are we able to see him do more with his legs? I think that's kind of what we're all waiting to see. Can he move a little bit more out of the pocket and make more plays with his feet when the pressure starts coming? So I'm going to put Julian Sand at my 4. And for the 5 spot, I will put Colin Simmons, edge rusher. I think we know that he is very, very talented. And I wanted to include 2 defensive players in this list. And I think when we're looking at defensive guys who can make a difference, Dylan Simmons would be an honorable mention. But I like, Dylan Stewart, and I like Colin Simmons as the premier edge rusher. And
And who's your top 5?
I mean, I'll just make it real quick because I don't really need to back up what they do because they do it on the field. Jeremiah Smith at 1. You got Malachi Tony at 2. You got Cam Coleman at 3.
a lot of receivers on this list.
Yes, and that's where it stops. Because then we get a little bias and we throw in my boy Lenore Sellers.
My goodness.
I think when you see a quarterback that can sling the ball as far as he can, run as fast as he can, his ability to make people miss like he can, I think it's hard to keep him out of that. I think he's the most exciting quarterback to watch. And then 5, I'm going to throw out a name, Coy Parrish from Oregon. He is a safety from Minnesota that just transferred there, and I was high on him. And I think he is going to be one of the best safeties in the country. Just watch.
Well, and with that being said, Anthony Richardson's the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And Cole Bishop's a top 5 player in the NFL as well. If we're going at this route, so
My takes normally go pretty good until they get hurt.
If Coy Parrish and Lenore Sellers are top 5 in the NFL, we'll do something crazy for you. That is bold as hell.
I think they're great players. I think they'll have good seasons, but
yeah,
the best at their positions, no. I just don't. We'll see. My 5, I'll rip through it. I think Jeremiah Smith is the best player in college football right now. He's shown what he could do. Colin Simmons is my number 2. I think he is a defensive monster, and he will have a phenomenal season under Will Muschamp. At my 3 is Dante Moore. I think he was arguably the best quarterback supposed to go into last year's NFL draft class, and he pulled out last minute. He's returning to Oregon, a team with lots of weapons. I think he'll have a phenomenal season. At my 4, Malachi Tony. I think going into his sophomore year, he is only going to excel at what he can do. I think he is really young relative. I believe he's 18 years old this year, which you never know. He might be a Ryan Williams where he has a sophomore slump, but I think he'll have a sophomore increase. And then at my 5, I have Dylan Stewart. I think he is an absolute monster. He did have a season last year where he was plagued by injuries, and he also wasn't really helped out on the other end of the defensive line. I think South Carolina helped to do a little bit to put more pressure on the other side, giving him more chances to get on 1-on-1s and 2-on-1s. So I think he really is going to eat this year. And then I have an honorable mention, maybe a little biased, but I think Justice Haynes. I think if he can remain healthy behind a run-centric team like Georgia Tech, where he has a lot of ability to, if he gets tired, he have 3 or 4 other running backs who can go in, and so he stays fresh throughout the game. I do think he will have a great year. Granted, he stays healthy. Which player do you have winning the Heisman Trophy this season?
we know it's a quarterback's award. It hasn't really been that. I mean, it's kind of been weird here lately with the Heisman Trophy, but I think if we're looking at best player in college football, I think it's going to be showcased this year. With what was brought in, I like Jeremiah Smith to be the winner of the Heisman Trophy. I think it's going to be a kind of a Devontae Smith type of year for him. I know Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, is really kind of centered and focused around getting the best player on the offense the ball the most, whether that is a running back, whether that is a receiver, whoever that may be. And I think he's going to do a great job of getting Jeremiah Smith the ball and utilize his ability to go downfield, get contested catches, and score. And as long as he stays healthy, I do believe he will have a Devontae Smith type season and win just about every award that he is able to. So I like Jeremiah Smith to take the Heisman Trophy.
Like Chris said, it's a quarterback award. I do think that as much as I want to say that Chris is right with Jeremiah Smith, somebody's got to get him the ball. And I think when you look at how successful of a season you have for Jeremiah Smith, you're going to watch the quarterback who threw to him. And it's going to be hard to pick between a wide receiver and Julian Sand. And I think a lot of your voters who love that quarterback award are going to give it to Julian Sand. So I think it'll be between those two for sure. They're probably going to beat out Dylan Stewart after his 30 sack year. So I do believe that Julian Sand is going to win Heisman this year.
All right. Nice.
I do agree it is a quarterback award, and I think that the quarterback who wins the national title or is the number one team going into the year as a national title favorite at the end of the season is going to be Oregon's quarterback, Dante Moore. I think he is a top tier talent. I think that there is definitely a gap between Dante Moore and the majority of the elite quarterbacks in college football. A lot of the guys who are going to go to the draft, there is definitely a gap in between. He'll be like a top early first rounder, where a lot of these guys will be in that second, third round. So I think Dante Moore has proven that he has the pieces around him, but also the pieces internally to have a very, very successful season on a very, very good team.
We talked about this 2 days ago, and Des told me that this year was going to be the first time you ever see brothers win back-to-back Heisman Awards. So
Whoa.
Little Mendoza action, that would be amazing. But knowing the game plan,
You'd
maybe
be
you get
pounding the
Heisman.
rock.
I was about to say maybe you get Heisman trophies for handing the ball off, but no, it would be it'd be great to see a Georgia Tech guy up there in the top 10 again for the second year in a row. But yeah, all right. Now going into coaching, Chris, who are your top 5 coaches going into this season? Giving me 1 through 5.
Going into this season, just because I'm going to keep this guy here until somebody surpasses him, I'm going to put Kirby Smart at number 1. I think for history and for what he's able to do as a coach, win important games, to do a lot with little. I like Kirby Smart at the 1. I got Ryan Day at my 2, just coming off the national championship 2 years ago with all the talent he brings in, with what we know about what he does at Ohio State. He just wins games, and he's able to make it to the postseason usually and win a few games. So I got Ryan Day at the 2. I've got Curt Cignetti at 3. I think Curt Cignetti, what he was able to do last year was absolutely fantastic, and I can't overlook that. To me, it's going to be to move him higher. Can he repeat it? Can he do it again? Can we see the same thing with winning important games and making it all the way to deep in the postseason? I'm going to put Dan Lanning at 4. I think we know that Dan Lanning is able to put together a great roster, and we know that he's able to put his team in the mix down the stretch. And then I put Steve Sarkisian at my 5. Can't argue with what he's been able to assemble with Texas and the powerhouse that we know that can be built there and could be built. We'll have to wait and see this season. But I like those as my top 5 coaches in college football right now.
my top 5 is pretty similar. I was really torn on where I was going to go for number 1. But ultimately, I do have Curt Cignetti. I think just his coaching resume just proves it. Number 2, I got Kirby Smart. Once again, his resume also proves it. You have Ryan Day at 3, then Dan Lanning at 4, and I got Steve Sarkisian at 5. My 4 and 5, those guys both, I think, struggle winning the big games to get them over that hump for their team. So I really do think those could interchange just depending on how the season goes.
Yeah, I'd love to argue, but mine's pretty similar as well. I do have Kirby Smart at the 1. He's been proven. He has the most national titles of any active coach. At 2, it's going to be Ryan Day. I think year in, year out, he's proven that he can have an elite Power 4 team. Closely behind him, I do think is Curt Cignetti. If Cignetti can go into the season and, one, make a deep run in the playoffs and or really in their matchup against teams like Ohio State and Oregon, if they do play them, they will be, if he can win those games, he can move his way up. But I do have Cignetti at 3. I think Dan Lanning is my 4 and Steve Sarkisian is my 5. It really would be interesting to see what Lanning and Sarkisian do this year, especially because they're both on the cusp of a very great season.
Out of those 5, who do you think is the best big game coach? Who has the ability to win that big game consistently?
Oh, I mean, I'm throwing out Kirby. I think of all the coaches who've gone out and won big games, you got to say Kirby Smart's probably the best at doing it, even when he goes down. That's the one thing I think that impresses me the most out of everybody is Kirby Smart has done the best about coming back to win big games when he's been down. Usually everybody else, if they go down, they're not able to come back and win. And I haven't seen that from any of the other guys, really. So I've been very, very impressed with Kirby Smart at falling back early in games that are big time ranked games and coming back and winning them. So if I'm looking at anybody to go out there and I'm betting on someone, a coach to win a big game, right now it's Kirby Smart.
I'd have to agree. I think Kirby has gone in many games where he was the favorite to win and many games where he was not favored to win. A lot of times where he's got a lot of criticism and they're like, hey, he's on the edge. He's fallen down. He's this or that. And time and again, he's gone out there. I think the stability of that Georgia team is probably the scariest of any elite team because they are an elite talent. They also have this stability of where the tides turn against them and their backs against the wall and they don't panic. They don't panic. They're not explosive, but it's step by step by step. And it's slowly waiting for the other team to open a crack. They put their foot in. Open another crack. They put their foot in. And that's the scary thing about Georgia is if you do not play elite football throughout that game, even if they falter and play 3/4 of good football, you're going to lose because they're stable. They're going to step by step by step get themselves into a position to have a chance to win. And they're going to put it in their hands. And at the end of the day, they're also going to say, here's your shot. Don't mess up because we're not going to. And I think that's the scariest thing.
Absolutely.
I also have Kirby Smart as well. It was hard for me to choose between Kirk Cignetti and Kirby Smart. I think the only difference is Kirby Smart's have been doing it for a while now. Kirk Cignetti, he's been winning the big games for the past 1, maybe 2 years. But I think you go and you look at Kirby Smart and what he's done okay, buddy.
Only one. He didn't do it the year before.
But I think you go out and you see Kirby Smart and what he does the last 5 or 6 years in the SEC, and it's hard to count him out. I don't think he will in these big games. It's hard for him to be an underdog, and when he is, I don't think that's a game where you say, "Oh yeah, Texas is going to breeze by," or "This is all Texas. This is all Texas A&M." Like these teams got it. You can't really count Georgia out of any game, no matter who they're playing. And that is not because of Gunnar Stockton. It wasn't because of Carson Beck. It was because of the guy calling the plays under the headset. And I think that is why Kirby Smart is the best big game coach.
You got to give Gunnar Stockton some credit, man. And you talk about just toughness and being a football player. I mean, this guy goes out there and plays with everything he's got. Now, granted, does he have the skill set? Probably not compared to other guys, but damn, man, he gives it everything. I mean, that's why that team is able to show so much fight. That's why they come back, man. I mean, that dude is relentless. You know you're going to send out a guy who's going to give you everything. And that goes a lot longer than just a guy who has talent and is just out there to maybe stat pad or to look flashy. I don't know if you agree, Des, but I really do like the guy who's quarterback for Georgia.
I'll go a step farther. In the past 3, they've had Gunnar Stockton, country tough boy mentality. He goes out there, he gets the job done. Like you said, he is not the best, but he can run the ball if he needs to run the ball. He can take a hit if he needs to take a hit. He can throw that ball if he needs to throw that ball. Then you go back to Carson Beck. A lot of people, the pretty boy, the flashy boy, but I haven't seen many quarterbacks. He got so much hate from his fan base. I guarantee there's hate inside that organization, and there's hate from the entire nation going towards Carson Beck, which he didn't seem like a likable guy, but he took that, and he took really the mental aspect. He had that mental toughness. He went out time and time again. He didn't win any national titles, right? He was close. He's had great seasons, but he also mentally tough. I mean, you got Stetson Bennett, also underdog, the little guy. He stepped in there when really I think he took the most hate from any Georgia fan base. I mean, they didn't want him in there. I think it was Jacob Eason. They wanted so badly. And Stetson Bennett went in there, underdog, the walk-on, and he did his job. And I think Carson Beck was probably the most talented of those 3, but none of those guys were these elite, your legendary college quarterback talent. But all 3 of them had this toughness and resilience in their own way to not only lead their team behind that elite coaching, they also motivate team. You see the whole team holds that identity of what the quarterback and the coach have. And I think Kirby Smart has done a great job in getting quarterbacks who have that different type of toughness and resilience to win big football games. All right, we're gonna spice it up. Give me one college football hot take that you're willing to stand by for the entirety of this season.
I mean, you can call it a hot take, maybe not, but I'm standing on that we will see another team out of the Big Ten win the national championship. I think it's almost a lock, borderline lock, that you're going to see one of them at least play in the national championship game. But you've got 3 teams sitting in the Big Ten that are very much favored to make it to that spot, and I think the trend continues. And if I could put, if you'd like to bet, I would bet on one of those teams winning it all. And I like a Big Ten team to win it for the 4th year in a row.
My hot take this season might be a crazy one, but I think you're going to see Arizona State in the playoffs. I think that, like I said, Cutter Boley coming in. You have Kenny Dillingham, who let's not act like he wasn't in the playoffs a year ago. They had a really good season last year. They lost a couple pieces and their star quarterback, but they replaced them all with very, very talented players. I think if they could figure out that defense and build a tough defense in the Big 12, they could fly through the Big 12, win their conference, and get that playoff spot. So that's going to be mine, is they're a dark horse playoff team.
Bold. I like it, though. I like it. I think my hot take is it'll be ACC focused. I think that Virginia Tech wins fewer than 7 games this year. I don't think that this transition that James Franklin's going to have is going to be as seamless as people think. I do think that they don't play an insanely hard ACC schedule, but they do play teams that will contest them very well. From a rivalry game with Virginia, who isn't that great of a team, but they just came off an ACC appearance, and they retained enough to be a threat, and you never know what happens in rivalry games. They also play teams like Clemson and Miami and Georgia Tech and SMU, and if they travel to Stanford and travel to Cal, and they got teams like Pitt who can give up a fight. I really do think that Virginia Tech is not going to win they're going to win less than 7 games. I think a rebuild needs to happen. I think that organization and that team is a lot more damaged within than people realize. All right, so now we're going to do a little rapid fire action here. I'm going to say a question. You're going to fire off an answer. No explanation. We're going to flow right through it. Y'all ready? Which conference wins the national title?
Big Ten.
SEC.
Big Ten. Which fan base will be the happiest this season?
Ohio
South
State.
Carolina.
Oregon. Which fan base will be the most disappointed this season?
South Carolina.
Miami.
Texas.
What is the best game of the regular season?
Ohio State, Oregon.
Ohio State, Texas.
I'm going to go LSU Clemson opening day.
What?
I think that's going to be a great game.
Next question. Next
Let me-
question. Next question. Next question.
One more. I
Yeah.
got. Ole Miss, LSU. We cannot forget about Ole Miss, LSU. That's going to be a phenomenal game to watch. Which team are you buying stock in? Remember, buy low, sell high.
Arizona State.
Oklahoma.
Georgia Tech. Which team are you selling stock in?
LSU.
Ole Miss.
LSU. Which team misses the playoff that everyone expects to make?
Notre Dame.
Indiana.
Come on, Des.
LSU. I'm sorry. Which team sneaks into the playoffs?
I'm going to go Arizona State again.
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech and Louisville. And what's one game that you're personally circling on your calendar?
Well, you already know it's last game of the year for Ohio State. That's the only one I care about.
Ryan?
South Carolina. And that orange ugly team.
Mine's the week before. Clemson, Georgia Tech. Winner goes to the ACC championship. I'll say a statement, and you just say buy. If you're buying it, you say sell if you're selling it. Ready? Georgia repeats as the SEC champion. Buy. A group of 5 team wins a playoff game.
So,
A non-quarterback wins the Heisman.
bye.
Sell. There will be 2 or more ACC teams in the playoffs this year.
So,
Buy. And then one more. The Big Ten four-peats as national champions.
bye.
Bye. Awesome. Cool. I think that wraps up this episode. This is our kind of preseason predictions going into the 2026 college football season. Let us know your biggest hot take in the comments. And don't forget, we're coming back after this season to review the tape and see who really knows ball. So check us out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at @the_up_sports. Also, make sure to listen to this full podcast on YouTube as well as Spotify. As always, I'm Des. This is Chris. This is Ryan. And you can catch us on the up.
We